The theme of non-substation 4 is non-structural measures against storm and flood disasters. And my name is Yuko Okuma. I'll be the MC for subsession 4. Thank you very much. In the session, 3 cities will make presentations. I would like to ask each of you to make your presentation time within 10 minutes. Time after that, we will hear Q&A at the end of each presentation. Now I'd like to start the first presentation. The top presenter is Bangkok.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Prayun Krongyot, Deputy Director General Bangkok Fire and Rescue Department, Bangkok Metropolitan Administration. It is an honor for me to today to stand in front of you, the presentation. Topic of my presentation is storm and flood. Presentation and mitigation plan. In the presentation, I will cover 3 main points. First is disaster prevention and mitigation plan of Bangkok. Second is human resource development. And third is public awareness. So that would be the overall structure of my presentation. And now let's move to the first point. Firstly, I would like to talk about main disaster in Bangkok. There are 6 types: flood, fire, road accident, hamat, storm, and bird flu. Today's presentation will focus on the natural disaster, especially flood and storm. 8 years ago, as you may know, Bangkok faced a great flood of 2011. During monsoon season in Thailand, the flooding began at the end of July. This flood soon spread through the province of northeastern and central Thailand along the Mekong and Chao Phraya river basins. In October, flood water left the mouth of the Chao Phraya and inundated parts of the capital city of Bangkok. Flooding persisted in some areas until mid-century 2012. As flood barrier in Pathum Thani fell, even more industrial aesthetics as well as suburban residential area became flooded. Parts of the Prahon Jotin Highway leading out of Bangkok become inaccessible, which caused severe traffic jam on alternative roads. The eruption of the barrier protecting the Krong Papra water supply canal early on 20 October allowed flood waters to enter the canal and leave the flow down to Samsen area in central Bangkok, overflowing and flooding several areas along the banks. Although the place was controlled, residents panicked and illegally parked cars on flyovers and parts of the Evertis Expressway. To prevent damage in future floods, the Bangkok governor gave policy guidelines on disaster prevention and mitigation plan. The chart is show the structure of Bangkok Metropolitan Administration Operation Section, one of the main sections in Bangkok Fire and Rescue Department, or BFRD. So the mission of BFRD is every mission for the people. BFRD is the leading organization in disaster prevention and mitigation to enhance the security of life and property of the people and states in Bangkok. The prevention and mitigation have 6 steps. The first step is risk assessment, the system which collects, accumulates, and utilizes information on disaster and disaster risk management, and GIS database, and hazard maps. We have 3 involved technology, which as remote sensing, weather observation, and forecast and information technology. The second step, assessment and improve risky area data, including evacuation areas in Thailand. The third step is collaborate risky area into the same standards of mapping the first step in relationship and communication between the DPM, BMA, and other related organizations can throw out the deals and CBDRM or community-based disaster risk management. The fifth step is capacities of high school and elementary school teachers enhance or promote education or disaster preparedness at school life safety culture. And the sixth step is the training system for enhance the capacity of staff on natural disaster risk management and incident command system. We always update to Bangkok disaster prevention and mitigation plans every year, which depends on the statistics and rescue. Likewise, we follow the Thailand disaster management model. We have the standards of Thailand Incident Command System, or TICS. There are 3 parts of the law and regulation: government, support, and community-based. We have to training the efficient personnel by ICS content to develop knowledge and skill, tools, and so on. We have to study, analyze, and plan for disaster prevention and mitigation. We have the action plan from case study of Great Flood 2011. We have learned that using giant sandbags to make a wall could only prevent flooding at the beginning. However, we found that the construction of reservoir and hill water drainage tunnels is a better way of protection. We have to allocate space to build reservoirs and design water drainage tunnels to ease the chronic flood problem, which often paralyzes the city during heavy downpours. For the emergency management, it is composed of 5 steps. 1. Disaster prevention and mitigation action plans with considerations for vulnerable people are formulated at local authority level. 2. Implementation of community-based risk management in Enchan. 3. Incident command systems is applied for management situation by objective. And 5 is achievement of early warning and response plan life and livelihoods. For rehabilitation and reconstruction, there are also 5 steps. 1. Evacuation, healthcare, and sanitation are also advocated. 2. Monitoring health status within the community. 3. Provide immediate care for the ill and follow up medical assistance in the nearest medical centers and module as deemed necessary. 4. Rehabilitation and construction of new facilities, infrastructures. And 5 is restore natural environment, moral, social, and economic obligation. And we always develop our disaster prevention system, following as the next slide after. In this, we monitor the communication networks and disaster notification network at all the time. For telephone, our emergency call is 199 and hotline is 0235468858. We also increase performance of control and coordinate system by moving forward to develop the emergency medical call and dispatch center. In addition, we developed database system to be up to date and available consistently. Now, let's move to the second point, which will focus on human resource development. We have 3 parts of the human resource development. First part is individuals. Second is volunteers, and lastly is people. We train and develop our staff to become an expertise in performing duties to provide the public service. Here are the examples of purchasing for the rescue plan program. And so we usually implement training program on public disaster plan to others, including students, teachers, and interested people. Indeed, we preserve and maintain the tools, equipment, and vehicles to ready to use anytime. The last topic of the presentation will focus on public awareness. We always implement a campaign during flood and the storm season to Bangkok people. Our campaigns is empower people, know together, think together for safe communities. We use public relations in various, including television and radio, newspaper, create a web page using an application, as well as making a public relations site at an eye-catching place. There is no doubt that Thailand is one of the lucky countries that major natural disaster is less occur than others. But the Bangkok Governor Police General Asawin Kwanmeung still tries to build our capital city, Bangkok, to be the one of a major city that will be the best and warmest place to live. Especially in Bangkok, a large metropolis and a center of for policy in all aspects. If safety management is not effective enough in the event of disaster, there will be severe mental, social, and economic losses that cannot be remedied in a short time. Enhanced enhancement of safety management proactively builds and then the operation systematically and reinforced interactively to drive Bangkok to become a global safety city currency. There is a tendency for disaster to try continually and more intensively. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is the end of my presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to Q&A. Please raise your hands if you have any questions or comments on the presentations. Our staff will bring you a microphone.
I think you don't have any question.
Yes.
Oh, my friend from New Zealand.
Dr. Kongya, for an excellent presentation.
Let me you answer speak Thai, okay?
Is the city of Bangkok noticing a difference with climate change, with more intense flooding? And if so, does the city have any strategic initiatives to deal with the effects of climate change?
May I?
ที่น้ำท่วมเหรอใช่เขาไม่ตอบเอง
Okay, sorry, May. Because of the climate change, we affect a lot of heavy rain, like El Nino, La Nina. Actually, we didn't affect directly the storm, but because we are the neighborhood of the maybe some country like Vietnam and Burmese. Our neighbor affects a lot of storm, big storm. That's why we affect maybe not too much, but some years the heavy rain from our neighbor link to our country and Bangkok. The Burma is in the north of Thailand, right? So the water from Burma goes to the north of Thailand, then go to Bangkok because we have the wrong river along the country. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. No more questions, Your Honour.
Thank you very much. My name is Arnoud Molenaar from the city of Rotterdam. And thank you for your presentation. You mentioned awareness as an important topic. Can you explain a little bit more what the awareness is about? Do you want to create awareness about prevention or what to do during a flood?
now my administrator, I mean the Bangkok governor and my staff, to have information to people, and when have the disaster and the flood and the storm, and you can help, and but my staff and helping to first helping, but and ต้องการที่จะบอกว่าคือประชาชนเบื้องต้นประชาชนสร้างความแข็งแกร่งประชาชนหลังจากนั้นก็การช่วยเหลือเบื้องต้นafter เดือนแล้วก็ประชาชนต้องสามารถช่วยเหลือตัวเองได้ในระยะยาวการสร้างความเข้มแข็งทางความรู้แล้วก็นำประสบการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นนะ
Okay, and we try to make the people aware about the flood. And we always support the people to learn about the reason and the experience about the flood that we affect on many years ago. And we also support the people to have the participation to solve the problem.
And we try to develop system for protection from administrator.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Jamila. I'm from South Africa, Durban. Thank you for the presentation as well. I just have two short questions. In terms of the type of floods that you guys are experiencing, I'm just trying to get a sense whether what type of floods are you experiencing? Is it the rapid onset floods or the slow onset floods, or is it the flash floods that you guys are experiencing in Bangkok? And then maybe also to get an understanding, does your drainage system has a contributing factor in your areas being flooded? Okay, that's the first one. And then the second one, I know Guti, you spoke about evacuation. What is your strategy in terms of housing the displaced people during floods? Where do you keep them? Thanks.
มีพายุแล้วก็การคาดการณ์ของการเก็บกักน้ำของชลประทานเนี่ยนะมันมีปัญหาแล้วก็คือเป็นมวลพายุน้ำที่มากนะที่เขื่อนไม่สามารถที่จะรับไม่ได้แล้วก็ปล่อยลงมาอะไรเงี้ยจะเป็นมวลน้ำมากที่สุด
For your first questions, actually in Bangkok we in Thailand we have a lot of there is a lot of storm, and in the north there is always the big water from the north and then to Bangkok, because we have the river, the long river from north
of Thailand.
Connect to Chao Phraya River in Bangkok. In Bangkok we have Chao Phraya River with separate Bangkok into two parts. So when the big water from the north went to Bangkok at the center of the country, so it collect all water from another part of our country, like from north, from the northeast, then go together in Bangkok. So and Bangkok have a big storm, not but too big, because the big storm will always come in the south, because in the south we have also the Gulf of Thai and Andaman Sea. So in south we affect a lot of storm more than in Bangkok.
Okay. ขอบคุณครับ
So for your For your second question is the evacuation for people, right? After the flooding, right?
ก็จะมีเจ้าหน้าที่ในทุกระดับที่จะช่วยเหลือนะตั้งนำออกมาแล้วก็ถ้ายังไม่ออกมาก็ดูแลความปลอดภัย
We always we have a staff to provide the evacuate plan. So the staff will monitor the area, which the red area. We will separate in red and green and yellow area. The red one is the most severe. So when some area affect a lot of flood, we will send a
มีเจ้าหน้า
staff
ที่เข้าไปช่วย
to help the people to get off there from their home. And we will provide the area, the area which not far from their home to be stay for
มีรถขนาดใหญ่ใช่ไหมแล้วก็มีโบสช่วยไปเซอร์วิสประชาชน
and we have the big car.
Yes.
Inside the car there's a kitchen, the toilet, and maybe some other stuff that the people will need to service the people during their absence.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the good questions and answers. Thank you very much. This concludes presentation of Bangkok. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much ขอบคุณมากครับ
Now I would like to ask you to the second presentation to Hanoi.
Xin kính chào tất cả các quý vị đại biểu. Tôi rất là vinh dự được đứng đây để nói về cái kinh nghiệm của Hà Nội trong phòng chống bão lũ và ứng phó với biến đổi khí hậu. Buổi sáng hôm nay thì trong cái phiên thứ hai, tôi đã được nghe nhiều kinh nghiệm của các nước liên quan tới.
For this opportunity, well, I try to come up with the best items, and I like to cover for my presentation. For example, the storage, water, the storage, and also the drainage system of the water, and also the infrastructure development is going to be quite important. Particularly, we have to work on the construction of the pathway roads for evacuation. And actually, I was so impressed with all these efforts from the earlier presenter. I was able to learn a lot, particularly in these areas. We are so happy given this opportunity and actually have a good relationship between our city and Tokyo. And that said, again, here I'd like to give you updates on what is going on in Hanoi, in Vietnam, and we're quite happy to give you updates. Talking about Hanoi, earlier, we have received the presentation about Thailand. Of course, there are some similarities. Yes, there are many common aspects between the two countries. That said, 9, 10, 15 storms and typhoons and actually are hitting us per year. Actually, we are affected a lot by storms, particularly coming from the climate change. I believe that Vietnam is one of the countries which are greatly affected by the climate change. The rainfalls in Tonkin actually on average is 1,600, and in Hanoi, average rainfall is going to be 1,800 milli. And actually, 2 days typhoon, actually, rainfall is going to be 800 millimeters. So it is going to be so serious. Back in 2008, we had heavy rainfalls. Starting from January, actually, it started raining in November. On average, 800 millimeters. But sometimes we have the average rainfall of 2,800. So it is really serious and strong in the storms. Actually, Hanoi is the area where the typhoon is going to pass through, and the big trees fell down and crashing down the vehicles and the cars. Yes, we had many cases like that. This shows the floods I'm talking about. The floods back in 2016 and 2008 or then 2018. In those years, year after year, as you've seen in this the pictures, and we are faced with this kind of situations. With rainfalls, of course, the entire towns and cities are going to be inundated. The river called the Da River, and this is really one of the major river systems coming from China, flowing from China. So residents in this area were affected, even though usually they do not have rainfalls. Of course, many efforts are underway, but once it starts raining, this kind of flood situation is going to take place quite easily. With this as a kind of background, in Hanoi, of course, we are learning many lessons nowadays. We are working on those initiatives and systems. This slide shows our efforts initiated by the climate change. And the strong leadership is going to be quite important. Strong systems, organizations need to be built. The capital city in Hanoi, we need to be able to cover the central the government going all the way to the peripheral cities, rural areas. And also we have to work on the guidelines and public documentations. And moving on, for response, this we have to be fully prepared. Flooding and also the inundation, of course, are going to result in lots of the emergencies. This is what we call checking, testing or checking. The most important point here is going to be the supply, delivery of the most important materials, including the food. It's very important for our side to be able to store those important the materials. 4 on-site and 3 is the non-on-site ad hoc measures. In other words, we need to have both an on-site as well as a non-on-site. We need to be able to have the resources to be dispatched to the on-sites where they need to receive the support. For emergencies, and of course, we need to be able to supply the materials on-site on the community basis. And moving on, for the general public, it's very important for us to increase the awareness among the general public. And also, infrastructure needs to be further improved. We have to beef up infrastructure. We have to actually improve we have to have the better maintenance of those facilities. We have learned many lessons from the past those cases. Actually, we started working on the awareness program. Drought as well as the flood. Well, Vietnam is the agricultural country, and of course, drought is another serious case we have to address. Da River and also Yue River, the water from those rivers. It's very important for us to make sure that the water keeps flowing from those river systems and also the catchment areas. We have built the catchment areas, the reservoir areas, and at a higher elevation. Moving on, we have many cities actually at a low level, and we have to think about infrastructure which will enable us to have the catchment of the water. So this the water adjustment is going to be quite important in order for us to be ready to response to those emergencies. And also the river, the barriers need to be further improved. The pressure is one of the serious issues we have to further address scientifically. Another point here is we have a plan to relocate citizens after the flood. We have to actually encourage the people to move into the different locations. Yes, this is one of the things we have done. Here now I'd like to share some of the lessons we have learned. First lesson is that be it the typhoon, be it the floods, they had affected villages and the local communities. So it's very important for us to actually have the group of experts who is quite familiar with the natural disasters. Also, it's very important for us to mobilize the entire people and the society. This is what I call the on-site. So people in the community should be able to help each other. Same time, the other municipalities need to help the communities in question. And moving on, be it communities and be it villages, it's got to be the community people centric. There are the three and the on-site, non-on-site, and also the four on-site guidelines we have produced. For on-site, the support including materials, the people also on-site. Logistics also are part of this and on-site. We are having those natural disasters every year. So on-site readiness is going to be quite important. The third lesson we have learned is leadership is going to be quite important. We have guidelines to promote further leadership. Item 4 concerning it's very important for us to organize trainings and propaganda, and also we have to issue documents in terms of guideline. Point 5 is it's very important for us to have the really good. We have to define the roles to be played by all the stakeholders concerned. Moving down, the earlier I talk about the leadership, and also it's very important for citizens to be proactive, and also we need to be able to assist them in offering the right information and early warning. Item 7 is we need to have really good plan to prevent natural disasters, and also we need to have a really good plan in order to be able to combat the potential problems. We need to build a space where we can have really good drainage of water. We have an accumulator stored. So the ponds or the catchment area like construction infrastructure needs to be built as a part of infrastructure. Whenever there is a flood taking place, it's very important for us to have the good pathways and where the water can leave from those areas. We have conducted these efforts and the result in a good mitigation of the disasters. Thank you indeed for your kind attention. I wanted to actually share our experiences with you. If you have any questions, I'm quite happy to receive and respond to any questions from the floor, please.
Now I'd like to move on to Q&A. Please raise your hands if you have any questions or comments on the presentation.
Thank you. Since nobody's asking, I thought let me just take advantage of the opportunity. Now, I just want to it's a way of confirming or also checking. I see you guys are experiencing these floods every year. So you're experiencing it this year, next year you're experiencing it again. So do we have a scenario where you have the people that have been affected last year, they affected again over and over? And what is your strategy in terms of dealing with these people that keep on being affected by the same floods? It could be because they are located at floodplain areas or high-risk areas. Thank you.
Vâng, rất là cảm ơn câu hỏi này. Thì chúng tôi câu hỏi là cái
Yes, thank you again for your question. I received a quite the important question, quite important question. Well, that said, and actually, we are working on scenarios, including our specific and basic measures. And what circumstances, what should be the responses, what should be the measures we have to offer. At the same time, we need to have the long-term perspectives. When this study is taking place, and actually, it's very important for us to keep on the best way to mitigate the potential the impacts. Earlier, I talked about the pumping station. Actually, highly capable pumping station is one of the systems we are now deploying to be ready against the serious, large-scale typhoons and then floods. Infrastructure is going to be quite important here. Earlier, I talked about the river Nada. What a road was built. River water quality of the river water needs to be maintained at a higher level. When we're having typhoon, when the flood is taking place, then lots of mass are coming into the river systems, and that is going to create the pollution of the water. And that may further travel into the freshwater system. So we have to prevent that kind of possibility. So we have to take care of this flow of the water. The second measurement we have taken was we reinforced the barriers, flood barriers. When a road was built above it, it can function as road and also the barrier. Along the barriers and the rivers, if you come to the city of Hanoi, you can get to see the concrete structures. Those water and barriers are becoming a part of roads. We are having a variety of ceramic forms. When we are having storms, we're going to be flooded so easily. But without those floods, you can get to see the beautiful the landscape of Hanoi. We have 315 villas, including the traditional craftsmanship, art and craftsmanship. We have market share 68% in 135,000 here for the square kilometers is the total area, and also we have population of 8 million. We have the rural areas quite large in area. It is quite large. For example, Ha Tei Shou, and also in the vicinity of Hanoi, we have those rural areas. These rural areas are going to occupy a large area within the metropolitan Hanoi. So we have to be fully ready to prevent the disaster problems. We have to quickly work on better infrastructure and others. Let me pause here. Do you have any further questions? Do you have any other questions, please?
Thank you. Okay, then presentation by Hanoi.
xin
Thank
cảm
you.
ơn, xin cảm ơn tất cả các vị.
I would like to continue to the next presentation. The next presenter is Rotterdam.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I really think it's important to be here and amongst my colleagues from other cities. That's already maybe a first non-structural measure to really invest in exchange between the cities. So my presentation will, of course, focus for a little bit about the structural measures, but also about the non-structural measures in Rotterdam, where we are dealing with water for a long time. First thing I would like to stress is how also water resilience and flood resilience are related to a lot of other challenges in our city. It's not only climate change that we are facing in this era of change, you could say. We are also dealing with a new energy transition and the digitalization of, well, nearly everything. And also, you could say, the way that we are working together with each other. A lot of citizens are taking own initiatives, etc. So governance also is important. I would like to stress to give you two examples of the interconnection between those well, goals and those part of the resilience strategy. The first one is we think it's important to invest in measures in the city that also, of course, prevent flooding, but also contribute quality, urban quality to the city, and even, if it's possible, add to the social resilience. So that's why we try to not only invest in bigger sewer pipes, but also invest in a better public space and try to design with water in a way that it's also good for the social cohesion in the districts, for example. Another maybe new topic for us is the relationship between water management and flood resilience and cyber resilience. In our case, we have a huge infrastructure of pumping stations and sluices and barriers, and they are all connected to the internet, dependent on energy. And when the energy power falls out, when there's a blackout or a hack, then we still can get a flood. So this is a new chapter on flood resilience, and actually cyber resilience is also, well, part of the package of measures, and in this case non-structural. So looking at the history so far, we already, of course, maybe for 1,000 years we are working on water, but only the last 15 years we started to taking into account climate adaptation. And the reason I show this picture is that it shows the development that we are going to work more and more integrated. We just started with our water plan, combining water quality and water quantity aspects, and then we added spatial planning to our plans and strategies. And then somewhere in 2008, we started to include climate change and climate adaptation, climate resilience, you could say. And now we are working in a broader perspective of resilience. So that's one development that we see happening in Rotterdam. And the other one is that we are taking into account and include more and more the citizens. So we used to work for the citizens, and more and more we are doing there are things done with the citizens, and now we see a development that there are a lot of measures taken by the citizens, and that's also well, relatively new for us, but it's important also somehow to manage this and to work together with the citizens, with the community on water resilience in our city. So far we took a lot of already a whole package of measures, and especially huge infrastructure measures like the storm surge barrier and the left-hand upper right corner, all the way to more, you could say, green infrastructure measures, softer measures, like at the right-hand bottom picture, which is urban farming on a rooftop. And this is important because a green roof is also slowing down the runoff of the rainfall, as you know. But when you combine it with urban farming, you can also involve the citizens. And a lot of schools go there, and while working on this piece of farm, they get educated about water. So it is also being part of the awareness campaign of towards our citizens. Maybe good to share with you, and sounds maybe strange, but in a city and country like Rotterdam, we are working for 1,000 years on water, but the awareness is quite low. And that the reason is that we have been managing it so well that people forget that they are living below sea level, and that they even don't think about a risk of flooding. And when there will be a flood, there will be panic. And I think 85% of the people will not be able to get out of the region. And that's something, because of climate change, we now have to take into account more and more. And I will come back on that one in a minute. Although we are working on all those measures, we think it's not enough. We have to get it to literally also to a new level. So we do have a huge landscape of flat roofs. So, and that's what we call the roofscape instead of landscape. And we want to not only invest in green roofs, but combine it with, for example, solar panels and small windmills, which is one of the answers to the growth of our city. And when we are able to maybe invest in a new layer in our city, it might also be a contribution to the safety. And during a flood, when you have a second layer, a level in your city, that might be an interesting part of your you could say, crisis management. New to us relatively is not that we also dealing with, of course, always dealing with too much water, but nowadays also we have to deal with droughts and more heat waves. So, for example, the guy is putting water on the bridge, that's because he has to cool it down, and otherwise it's getting stuck. So our infrastructure also has to be redesigned related to the new climate. And our levees, especially in the regional scale, are made of peat and clay. During dry periods, they can crack and even collapse. And that can cause a flood. So a drought can cause a flood. And that's new for our thinking in Holland. And so during a heat wave, we have to control these levees. And we also want to introduce this with a smarter control. So there are experiments with sensors in these levees. So also smart techniques are, I think, important additional non-structural measures in our flood prevention. And of course, it's about, again, here about the citizens, especially for the vulnerable people. We have been able to use and transform an app from Athens, the Extrema app, as we call it. And this, in case of a heat wave, helps people to find cooler places in the city and places where you can find drinking water taps. A similar app we want to develop for flood risks, so that people are connected to a new rain radar, get specific information, and are able to, well, for example, empty their rain barrel in time, so they create more storage, but also get information about maybe certain streets that are flooded, so that they, can take that into account. So smart tools, like apps, can be interesting also in your flood resilience. Also, related to another development, the energy transition, we are getting more and more electrical cars. So also more and more charging units. And the companies that develop this are also developing these things at the waterfront. So that's a new also mindset. We have to negotiate and talk with these utility companies to do this in a waterproof way. And as I told you, we have to find out and invest in vertical evacuation. I think that's something that we can learn from Tokyo, for example, or other cities. We are not really used in evacuation. We always invest in prevention. So evacuation, especially in a vertical way, is something that we have to develop more and more. I see my time is running out, so I have to speed up a little bit. One new element that we're also now facing is the resilience as a whole on the level of a district. What we like to do is to not only invest in climate adaptation and flood resilience in this district, but find out how we can use it as a leverage also for social resilience. So we really are looking for the connections between those challenges. For example, starting with schools and creating resilient schoolyards. And the way we are doing it is a so-called call for action. So we are challenging the private sector, but also citizens to come up with ideas to work on the resilience of this district as a whole. A little bit inspired by a Rebuild by Design process in New York. Another part of to work on awareness, but also to work on the mainstream of resilience, including flood resilience and water management and climate adaptation, is the resilience scan. So we think it's important that our colleagues at the local government, but also important stakeholders in the city, start to embrace resilience as a concept. And it has to become part of their mindset, of their DNA. And that's why we developed this scan. And it's about shocks and stresses that you have to deal with. It's about the goals of the resilience strategy. And it's about the 7 qualities of resilience, as we call them. I will not go into detail, but that's the concept so that everybody can apply resilience in his work. So, concluding, I think it's important to really state that it's additional to, of course, invest in your structural measures. Important to develop holistic strategies. And looking at the latest IPCC report, I also think it's important to speed up and to scale up, something that's on the top of the agenda of the new Global Center on Adaptation. Resilience by design, and do it in an inclusive way with the citizens and done by the citizens. That's more and more important. And again, I think the fact that we are exchanging this with each other, networks like C40 and 100 Resilient Cities are even getting more crucial than ever before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to Q&A. So please raise your hands if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much, Arno. As usual, that was fantastic. It sounds as though Rotterdam is looking at sort of moving away from centralised infrastructure to decentralised infrastructure with solar panels and, I assume, batteries and stored water, in a sense. I'm just wondering, in your city, is there any resistance from the big infrastructure owners to where we're heading with decentralisation? Because clearly there is a vested interest in the big infrastructure owners, and I was wondering if you had observed any resistance from the current owners to where we seem to be heading as cities.
Thank you. Excellent question, Mike. Well, both in the water domain as in the energy domain, you see somehow it's getting more and more decentralized. So we're not experiencing a resistance, but these companies, I found it difficult to deal with a new situation because you mentioned solar panels. It's happening anyhow, so they have to adjust their business model. And related more to the topic that we are here for, so flood prevention, we found out that we of course we do it for the citizens, but we also need the citizens to become flood resilient and climate resilient, because 60% of the area of the city is non-public, is in private hands. But that area also has to become climate adaptive. So we need the citizens to convince them not to pave their gardens, for example, or we want to persuade them to invest in green roofs. So that's why we set up a subsidy program. So this area where the citizens live, that's also what we need. And you can say it's going to be decentralized, but it's part of the whole menu that we have developed to become climate resilient.
And can I ask, so is the city leading that, or is private investor, or is it a combination of those things?
Yeah, it's, so on one hand, a colleague of me at the water department started a so-called water-sensitive program, and now he actually stopped with it because it's now part of the community itself. So people, they even organize water-sensitive parties and cafes. They really think it's fun to, and it is really a community growing that want to work on their own measurements, like rain gardens and greening the streets, etc. And that is a growing community. It's a network. What we support with a little bit money, seed money. And it's difficult to manage. Somehow we have to registrate what they are doing, because it's part of the bigger puzzle. And the difficulty is that we cannot maintain it. So when a lot of people start to decide to get rid of their green roof, that's affecting the water management. So it's also difficult for us to find out how the balance between the governance and just letting it happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting to hear that you mentioned because you have managed water so well, people are less aware of the fact that it may cause disasters. So in terms of raising the awareness at the public level, is there some program or something being done at the school level, for example, integrating it in the school curriculum, or are there like learning centers where you share these things to the general public?
Thank you very much. I have to be honest that there is not really one big organized awareness campaign, because we are with a lot of governmental bodies that deal with water. Only in Rotterdam we have to deal with 3 what we call water boards. That's a governmental organization only focusing and in charge of water. And they have developed education programs for young kids, for schools, for example. And as a local government, what I just tried to explain, we help communities with awareness, but also with taking measures at their own garden or street. And there is also a national campaign going on about awareness. So on national level, there's a website where you can go and tick in your code where you live, and then you get information about flood risks. So how flood resilient are you? That's more or less the title of that website. And that's and another one maybe interesting to share is it's under development. It's a kind of a blue label for houses. So maybe you're aware of energy labels, so that you can see to what grade your house has been isolated or how energy efficient it is. Now we start to develop so-called blue labels that shows how flood resilient your house is. So the higher the ranking, the more flood resilient it is. And that's also well, it's not maybe not creating awareness, but it helps. And it's a more sophisticated way that when you buy a house, you get this information. And you want to sell your house, you better be sure that it has a high ranking on the blue label. Yeah. So there's a whole package of measures. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. This concludes presentation of Rotterdam. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
The last presenter is General Disaster Prevention Department, Tokyo Metropolitan Government.
Good afternoon. My name is Koga, Senior Director for Disasters Prevention Planning, Bureau of General Affairs of TMG. We have the heavy rain today, unfortunately. I have not heard any bad news, so I think I can continue the presentation. So I'm quite relieved. Now I'd like to explain the TMG's non-structure measures against disaster. This shows the flooding in Japan and damage. As you can see, Japan is very vulnerable to flood disaster. Flat land consists of only 30% of the total Japanese area, and the rivers run in a steep slope, so rainfall will fall down from mountain to city area very quickly, and flat land is susceptible to subsidence. And so-called 0-meter area had spread, and not only flood but also high tide. There is a high risk of high tide and flood. Besides, Japan is often attacked by typhoon. So the typhoon generated in typhoon travels to north, bypassing the high pressure area and path through Japan. And a major flood occurred all over Japan, but flood control, flood management have improved. So overall, the number of the cases of major scale flood has decreased, but recently, almost every year, a major large-scale flood occurred in various areas of Japan, particularly last July. Torrential rain happened in western Japan, and the toll of victims exceeded 200. This slide shows the data in Tokyo area. The torrential rain, which is above 50 mil an hour, the occurrence of torrential rain has tripled in 30 years. So as reported, climate change as a result of global warming, the degree of intensity of rain became harder, and such a torrential rain will be more frequent. And recently, major scale flood, which have occurred across the nation, could happen in Tokyo anytime. This slide shows the altitude of TMG area. The red dots red area is the east side of Tokyo, and blue to green indicates this area, which indicates these areas are of low altitude. And these areas face to the river mouth and Tokyo Bay, and these areas carry high risk of flood and storm surge. And particularly this dark red area, it's so-called 0-meter area. And these areas are lower than the sea level. Why we have such areas? These areas used to be above sea level, but due to the extraction of underwater and natural gas, these areas subsided max 5 meters. But recently, due to the regulations, the subsidence have almost stopped. And this map shows estimated number of people seeking shelter in Greater Tokyo area. And the recent torrential rain led to the revision of law. And we announced the maximum area which carries a risk of overflood. And the east side of Tokyo, which is of low altitude, which carries a risk of flood. And here, Arakawa River runs, which could cause a major scale flood. Arakawa River and Edogawa River. Edogawa River also runs the risky area, and expected the rainfall would be more than 500 to 600 in 72 hours. And high tide is also taken into consideration at a possible maximum level. And history biggest typhoon, 910 hectopascal, was the basis for this consideration of the area. And flooding and high tide due to such a flood, we estimate that over 2.55 million people will have to evacuate in Tokyo DMG area. So in order to let these residents evacuate without delay, we are now working on the wide area evacuation measures. And in case of a disaster, we need to secure the place for evacuation and method for evacuation. And we are figuring out how to smoothly lead evacuees to the evacuation area. And the local government, we normally, where the disaster occurs, the evacuees use local schools and local community halls. In case of the large-scale flood, the hard-hit areas tend to expand. So the people living in the non-flooded area needed to evacuate in advance. And we are considering the rules for such evacuation. And the relatives, and we are also working on the promotion of the voluntary evacuation to the relatives and parents' places. So in order to let the residents, huge number of evacuees evacuate with no confusion, we are reviewing the time schedule of the train service, and also we are also considering the smooth guidance of evacuation to be conducted by police authority. In last year in Western Japan, many people were victimized due to the torrential rain. This is because people did not actually evacuate, even though evacuation information was released from the administration. Only a few percent of the people evacuated. So in order to have them understand disaster risk reduction information properly and take the precautionary action suitable to their living environment, we prepared a package for evacuation from the flood. And this is a Tokyo, this kit is called Tokyo My Timeline. So this kit shows what actions to be taken in the judgment of evacuation. And you can stick on the seal on the guidebook. And the guidebook for the preparation of My Timeline sheet. And for the children, we attached a guidebook for small children to consider flood, disaster, and evacuation. This is a sample of the sheet. In case of typhoon, individual families, what to consider and what to take action in advance. So specifically in the lower part of slide shows from the left to right, which shows the passage of time, and in the changing situation, what to be taken will be recorded and sorted out in advance of the disaster. So I have explained hard copy based information and data. And we have developed a tool to prepare such data on a smartphone. So you do not have to write down the guideline and information for evacuation. You can input the data in the smartphone, which would be helpful for evacuation. And also, in order to confirm where you are and how you are evacuating, it is important to know what sort of flood risk your location has. And it is correlated to a GPS function. And you can, this tool indicates the flood risk map, which shows whether or not you are in a flood expected area, or what sort of the degree of overflood could be expected. And so a map which shows the risk of flood will be installed in the disaster risk reduction application TMG prepared. So by extending such non-structure measures extensively, we are going to improve the awareness of the Tokyo residents to flood disaster. So in a substantive way, I have explained our initiatives. You cannot stop the disaster, but we can mitigate the damage as a result of disaster. Next year, we are going to hold the Olympic and the Paralympic Games to realize a secure and safe city. We are going to take various DRR measures so that we can create disaster resilient city, Tokyo. Thank you very much.
If you have any questions or any comments, yes.
Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I have two questions. The first one is, I saw on one of the slides you're speaking about, it was written, running shelters. I would like to, maybe you can explain something about what this is. And the other one is the app on the phone you showed ended with a picture of a building and the height. I'm interested in, are you also giving people information to evacuate vertically, so upwards instead of out of the city?
Thank you very much for your questions. This is a wide area evacuation initiatives. And this river is so large-scale, Edogawa River and Akawa River, which deserves to government's control. And the residents and the area around these rivers will foresee the arrival of a typhoon and a flood in advance. So if you live in these areas, we request them to evacuate to the area which will not be attacked by the flood, which not would be affected by the flood or typhoon. So this is an unprecedented action. So I think we presume 2.55 million people, approximately 2.5 million people will be subject to this new evacuation measures. So this is a quite new evacuation measures. So together with the national government, TMG is now negotiating with various stakeholders at train companies in order to build a consensus for such innovative evacuation. That is activities this map explains. And also, you posed a question on application. So the evacuation to the high area, that's why you have asked. So in a general term, in case of flood, tsunami, back in 2011 of Great East Japan earthquake, the authority asked the residents to evacuate to the higher areas. And in some areas of Tokyo, suppose a person use these apps and investigate where to go. And this screen shows the highest possible level the flood could come up. So in this case, 10-meter high tide could happen. Therefore, the residents of Tokyo may understand they needed to evacuate to the location higher than 10 meters.
More questions? If not, this concludes the presentation of Japan, Tokyo. Thank you very much. Before we conclude subsession 4, I'd like to ask Mr. Arnold Molina to make a small speech as a conclusion.
Thank you very much. I took some notes. So I think it's great, again, to be here amongst colleagues of other cities. Although our cities are completely different topographical and different geographical situations, we more or less are facing similar type of challenges regarding water and flood resilience. So that's why it's always good to learn from each other. And I heard several things. First of all, good governance, and even including leadership was a good point to mention. Governance, so we have to break down the silos, but also work more and more with the citizens. And having said that, awareness, I think nearly all cities mentioned awareness is an important part of prevention, additional to awareness and information, what to do after a flood and related to evacuation. But also prevention is I think, becoming more and more important. To work on the flood resilience of our cities. And I was also pleased to hear about possibilities to organize even trainings in certain cities. So there's an interesting package of non-structural measures that we can take and must take. Because again, I think the urgency is there. It's time to act. Climate change is already happening, and it's even going faster than ever before. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molina. Thank you. So this concludes subsession 4, I'm sorry. Next, we'll